Hello and welcome to Unboxed, the podcast that dives deep into the world of custom packaging and innovative brand experiences. In each episode, we'll be exploring the latest trends, innovations, and best practices in the design and packing industry, and then taking a look at how they can help businesses like yours to create memorable and impactful brand experiences. I'm your host, Sam Johnston. Let's get started. I'm your host, Sam Johnson, and in this episode, we'll be talking to Walker, who is the founder of Lubanzi Wines, a sustainable South African wine company that's committed to creating a social impact. They're doing some incredible things, like they donate 50% of their profits back to funds and projects that support the low-income laborers and families at the very beginning of their supply chain. And we're very excited to speak to them today about this, and it's great to have you here, Walker.
Thanks for having me, Sam. I appreciate it.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it. Well, as always, we'll be going through a set of 5 questions, so you, as the listener, can kind of snip through and jump to the specific question you want if you want to do that. But the first one's going to be, how did our guests today get into their career? How did they get stuck into building brands and doing the awesome things they are? The second one will be around, how do they see custom packaging and product brand experiences contributing to building a customer base, a loyal customer base at that? The third one will be, can they share any success stories, maybe within their experience, or what brands that they've seen peripheral to them, or any case studies where they have transformed their brand through their packaging and through getting their message through the product out to the customer at the other end. The fourth one's going to be, what are some of the biggest challenges or roadblocks that businesses like you, the listener, might face when it comes to getting all of that into packaging and then getting that branding across onto shelves and out into customers' hands. And the last one will be a look into the future, a little bit of forecasting to see what is the future of custom packaging, what is the future of brand experiences and getting missions through that, and what are some of the things that businesses like you, the listener, could be doing today to stay ahead of that curve. So, without further ado, we'll jump straight into the first question, Walker, which is, what inspired you to get into your career and get stuck into the brand you're doing currently?
Yeah, so I'm originally from a very tiny town in the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia. We call it the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so I grew up loving the outdoors, which is kind of ultimately what took me to South Africa. Where I admit I went to go on exchange to go study at the University of Cape Town, but did not do a lot of studying. Mostly rented really crappy Mercedes cars from a German guy, and put roof racks on them and strap surfboards to the top, and mostly went hunting for some of the best hiking, backpacking, sort of outdoor adventures in the world. And I definitely found that stuff. But I also in that time, mostly what happened is I completely fell in love with South Africa, with the tapestry of the place and the culture and the people. And I say this a lot, but I think there is no place in the world that can romance you the way that South Africa can. And anybody who's been probably shares that sentiment. I think it has this way of getting underneath your skin. And that, I've trust me, if you catch that bug, you have it for life, which is exactly what happened to me. So sort of along that journey, I met another American guy, Charlie, who would later become my co-founder. And that's sort of when this like very tiny little idea starts to gestate. Obviously, you spend time in rural areas in the Western Cape, just outside of Cape Town. You're going to be in the winelands. So sort of got exposed to this huge community of artisans and farmers who are growing grapes and making wine. And you have to remember, I'm 19 years old at this time. So if the listeners can remember what it felt like to be 19, you have a very malleable mind. And yeah, I just completely fell in love with the romance of it. And that's when the sort of the light bulb started to go off. Obviously, if you spend any time in South Africa, you'll notice 2 things. The first one is the tapestry of this place is pretty incredible. But the second one is that it's a country that's dealing with like really serious and pervasive wealth inequality that is the vestige of apartheid. And I think in no shocking way, this is something that South Africa needs to deal with. Largely just for equity purposes, because obviously most of the low-income population is Black, and those people were under oppression for hundreds of years due to colonialism. And so obviously that wealth inequality permeates into agriculture and commercial agriculture, and that includes growing grapes. So started to kind of get really enamored with this idea about, discovering South Africa as this massive international wine producer, making some of the very best world-class wines, and there being this laboring population that's relatively marginalized and exists in an industry where it's the people at the very beginning of the supply chain who get squeezed. So you combine those two things, and that's the light bulb moment, which is maybe there's this opportunity to start this sort of young, innovative, forward-thinking, and I think really importantly, socially responsible wine producer that's about real people in a real place with a real story, making real wine, and to use that wine almost as a proxy to share the magnetism of South Africa as a country, but also to deliver some real meaningful impact back into these communities at the beginning of the supply chain. So that's the story of how it sort of all got started. And here we are. That's
amazing.
7 years later.
Now building some of the best wine on the planet and moving and shaking, getting it around the world. And clearly in your sort of professional and social history, you've had a heart for people that are, that maybe have less access to services or have additional needs. And I saw that you was it vice president at the Best Buddies program as well?
Yeah, this is when I was a student at university. I served as the vice president of our university organization for working with people with mental and developmental.
I love that. Yeah, I think I'm working with the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Charlotte, where I am locally in North Carolina, and they have a connection with that organization and match up people so that they can have a support and just friendship and gain more sort of social interaction in their community. It's a really important thing. Good on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Well, thanks for giving us the background. What a journey, and I love your heart for doing business, not only in a beautiful place with amazing product, but in an amazing way that provides such value back to the people that it's coming from. That's an awesome place to start any vision and mission for a business. So how does the packaging, how do you get that brand and that mission and vision? Because that's such a big part of this organization. How do you get that across through the packaging, through the brand, to be able to build a loyal customer base and to bring that tribe of people along with the journey with you?
I think, honestly, listen, the best advice I could give to anyone was make great friends. That's the most important part. Like, we've had a ton of help along the way trying to bring that sort of vision to life. And I think we've learned a lot about who we are and who we want to be along the way. I don't think this was, rock solid from day one. And I think, the best businesses out there are trying to iterate, day after day to be better, make small incremental adjustments on the margins. And whether that's being more sustainable, being more innovative, trying to, share something new and delight customers, give them something that adds real value to their life. I think that's one thing we've always tried to come back to, is that we're trying to deliver products to people that they actually want. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so much out there, especially with how much our world is sort of centered on e-commerce and targeted advertising, that is a little bit focused on providing people products they don't want. That try to center ourselves around this idea that let's actually just make things that are additive to people's lives, and that bring them like joy and delight. And if you sort of have that as your North Star, along with this idea that if there is ever an opportunity to try to make a change to your product or your packaging that delivers a more sustainable solution, I think that's our responsibility, not just us in general, but I think all people in, CPG, it needs to be status quo that we're all doing that. If all it costs you is time and effort, I think that's what we need to be doing.
I love that. Yeah, I think a number of the clients, so this show is obviously sponsored by Merchant Boxes, and they have a big leaning on the environmental and sustainability side of packaging. Not only from there's a lot of demand for that, but also the team have expansive amount of experience in it. And there's so many options now for innovative ways of bringing sustainability into packaging that most people don't think of. There's the kind of the OGs of the woods and the kind of the glass and the certain materials that are naturally recyclable if they're treated appropriately post landing with the customer. But there's also some really innovative ways of not just making it so that it can be degradable or can be reused, but also it can be used by the customer in a new way. So like there's paper that has seeds built within it that you can literally plant that packaging in the yard and it can produce, growing flowers or food for you and your family. But there's a lot of demand for it, and there's working with good partners, and there's great partners out there. MerchantBox is just one of those. And just asking the question more often than not can open up a whole scope of conversation around like, dang, I could actually create this at roughly the same price or maybe even cheaper in some circumstances and get it environmentally friendly. Now let's share that messaging with the clients that we're being responsible with how we treat the planet as we go through this process. It's a big part of the world at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's so cool. I mean, beyond, as you said, the sort of paper packaging that comes with seeds inside, beyond being, having a longer life cycle as a product in general, that stuff is so cool. Like, I think, and that's a way, that's kind of goes back to what I said before. It's like, can be a product that like delights customers. Something so cool and fun about, unboxing something you received and then taking that paper and planting it in the ground and watching flowers come up. We're trying to be more sustainable, but how amazing is it when we can make those sustainable choices and they also like provide awesome experiences for customers in general. And I can say, I mean, I think I admit, especially as a young founder, it is when you don't have a ton of industry experience specifically, like it can be hard to sort of sift through the massive amount of information now that's out there with everyone telling you a different story about what's really truly the most sustainable choice. And I think the best thing you can do is just ask a lot of questions. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. I actually once was, and I'm gonna omit all the names here, just so it's not to blow up anyone's spot. But we used to work with a supplier for all of our corrugated cardboard. And actually one day I drove past the plant where they were producing that cardboard, and I was completely horrified. Just like visually, I mean, you look at it and sure, there's a lot of details there, but anybody who saw that could look at it and say, there's just no way that's good for the planet. And so we made an immediate change, like directly from that, we completely ceased our purchasing relationship with that supplier and moved to someone new who works on 100% recycled. And, I wish we had done it sooner, but I have to say, the truth is I got told a lot of stories about how 100% recycled cardboard maybe wasn't the most sustainable. And it had a lot to do with the logistics, the built-in logistics of delivering that product to their vendors or their suppliers. And I think what we did was ask a ton of questions, and when in doubt, if something doesn't feel right from a sustainability standpoint in your gut, it's probably not. Where there's smoke, there's probably fire. And it's just I think you just have to have confidence in your own intuition, and you're sort of guided by that your own sort of internal North Star about doing what's right. That's your gut generally is probably leading you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, with all of that kind of context in mind here, do you know of any success stories or maybe some case studies of other businesses that could be big, name brands in the household, or some local things that you've just seen around you where they've transformed their brand through packaging or through design and branding exercises? Have you seen anybody do that well?
Well, I think that's interesting. That's a great question. And I wish I had a perfect answer for you here, because I think there's a lot of companies that are doing that. I think one of the people that we look to a lot, and this is probably going to be true for lots of brands that care about sustainability, but we look a lot to Patagonia, and it's not just only sort of what they do on a governance level from a commitment to sustainability. But the thing and this goes back to what I said about asking a lot of questions. I mean, I think one of the things that Patagonia does an amazing job of is they do really deep intellectual data gathering projects, and they release those reports to customers about exactly the research they've done on trying to pick the most sustainable solutions for delivering their product to customers. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think what's great about that is that you actually maybe don't even need to read those reports in order to get the information you're looking for as a customer. But what you can know is, man, doesn't it just feel great to purchase product from a company who you know is undergoing that exercise in general? I just think that's something that we look to in general, of never for some inspiration in terms of never stop asking questions about how we can be better.
That transparency is so key, especially if you're going to go down this environmental sustainable route, because there's a lot of brands out there that put on the facade of sustainability because they like the marketing benefits of it. But as soon as you dig under a little bit of detail, you realize pretty quickly that they're doing it to sort of pay lip service, but not actually. It's not a big part of what the organization is. And even if this one package is, nothing else they're doing is. And it's you're not. The client can't buy into a brand that doesn't give you the transparency on this, because they can see through it pretty quickly. Everyone knows, the Instagram face of a person versus what's going on behind the scenes. We've all seen that. We know people, and it's the same with brands. So creating reports like that is something that merchant boxes have done this a couple of times before, right? Where they get brought in to do an audit of an organization. Sometimes that audit is purely on just saving them money, basically. How can we be more efficient in the spend of creating the packaging? And that might be, $1 million worth of saving a year, which is awesome, and they can do that. But then on the other side of that, there's the environmental sustainability audit, which looks at maybe cost isn't quite as much of a concern. Maybe their margins are okay at the moment, but they want to get that third-party audit to understand, what can we show that isn't us, that says, here's the situation, and not just the situation, but here's the ways and options that are available to do other things, and making that available to shareholders, which sometimes is the customer, if it's a non-profit, or if it's an NGO, if it's whatever it is. So I think that if you are an organization at any scale, and we have people that listen to this that are completely, they haven't even started their brand yet. They have an amazing idea. They have a passion and a vision, and maybe sustainability is a big part of what they'd like to do as they take this to market. We also have people that are in much larger brands and just want to get a different perspective. Wherever you are, speaking to a partner that has a focus on sustainability will at the very least give you, a new vision of what this industry can do for you in that kind of regard. And then as you get moving, some of them are free, some of them are paid. Merchant Boxes is free, but there's other ones that are out there. And then they can jump in and do an audit for you and tell you, well, you said you were going to do this. This is where you're at currently. And by the way, things are moving so quickly in this industry. Here's the new things that are now available and the new innovations that are happening in the market, which is really, really valuable. So the fourth question here is, let's say you've started on that journey, sustainable or not, you're taking a product to market. What are some of the biggest challenges or roadblocks that business owners might face when it comes to branding their package, getting that message across through the packaging and then into the customer's hands?
I mean, I think it is a sea of challenges. I think the best advice I could give to someone would be, don't be fearful of wading deep into the water and trying to tackle them. I often find, and this is with everything, but I often find that once you just take one step in, it doesn't seem quite as scary anymore to tackle those challenges of how to build your product. Is it possible to source this interesting material that is more sustainable? It feels like a dream or impossible until you just make one phone call or send an email and someone gets back to you and says, absolutely, I'm here to help. And we definitely have this. And then you think, it wasn't actually as complicated as I thought it was going to be. And it's great because I think that's the other piece of advice here, is that you got to just ask for help. People are interested in collaborating. and it's fun. Like that's the fun of it, right? Is working on new innovative stuff. And for anybody in CPG, if you ever have to, do the sort of guerrilla marketing style, boots on the ground, face-to-face selling of product, I can just promise you it's going to feel so much better if you walk in with something that's interesting or innovative or trying to push the conversation forward, even just a notch. And I think wine is a great example of this because it has its roots, we're talking thousands of years here, in this very traditional style. Everything looked the same. The consumer, I think, got really accustomed to purchasing this thing that looked only one way. So sort of the Pavlov's dog, it's you train them to purchase only one thing if they want wine. And I think now there has started to be, as there is in lots of beverage and beverage alcohol, there's lots of people using packaging to really iterate on that concept. And I think the big winner there is the consumer, right? It's you can get wine in bag and box, in cardboard, in cans. It's just something that we do a lot of. And we finish the glass bottles that we do the more traditional. We finish with a cork that you can actually like twist off and remove by hand. And I have to say, we've been doing it for 7 years, and I have to admit the only reason it actually happened was we sort of dared to ask a random question to somebody. And this is after, I think, maybe 25 or 30 emails to suppliers of bamboo, like bottle stoppers in China, which is, I'm almost embarrassed to say now, because of course, no, you cannot use bamboo as a cork. It will not be safe for the wine. But we sort of dared to go ask those questions. And I admit the only reason we did it at the beginning because we thought it was cool. And here we are now 7 years later, and I think it's been additive to the customer experience.
If you find it cool, they're going to find it cool.
Well, maybe not everything, but I think this one has turned out well.
Love that. Well, looking at the future, so it's hard to forecast anything, but looking at the future of packaging and these brand experiences evolving, maybe over the next 5 to 10 years, what maybe one or two things would you say businesses should be looking at today to stay ahead of the curve for tomorrow?
And are you saying ahead of the curve from a sustainability standpoint or from an innovation standpoint?
Could be any of them. Yeah. Like if there's something that that helps somebody to position themselves more effectively and they have a product to get ahead of the curve over the next 5 to 10 years, what's something they should be keeping an eye on?
I mean, listen, I think like avoiding single use is probably one of the most important things from a sustainability standpoint. That's and focusing on agriculture, I think, is another really important part of it. I mean, I think people should probably be paying attention to even beyond, and I guess this takes us a little away from packaging specifically, but I think people should really start paying attention to logistics. So much of the carbon footprint of the products we buy and receive is all tied up in logistics. So I think innovation in, I'm getting crazy away from packaging here, but I do think innovation in trucking, in freight, is going to be really critical to like getting products in the hands of customers with a lower carbon footprint. And I think if it were me, I would be really trying to find ways to, especially if I was building an e-commerce brand, I'd be really trying to figure out ways to put my product in the hand of customers in a way that like really walks the walk from a lowering the carbon footprint standpoint.
I think that's great. And that's not too far off. I mean, logistics is a big part of packaging. How does it get from A to B, from the factory, from the plant, all the way down to the client?
Totally. And so much of packaging, so much of packaging is about how do we produce our product in a way that it is can make it from point A to point B safely and efficiently, that it's I mean, it's one of the things we do with cans. When we pack wine in cans, the carbon footprint of a can is less, exclusively, really, mostly just because it's lighter. It stacks better, so it takes up less space. So yeah, I mean, all that stuff is really important. I mean, and I hate to say it, like, one of the things that's great is, and this is not new, is like people should be trying to buy things in bulk, so that it's not. So you actually need less packaging, and I think maybe there's something really special in there about the less is more approach from a packaging standpoint.
100% agree. And a lot of our more recent guests have been talking about this connected packaging kind of revolution that's happening at the moment. Connected packaging isn't something that's new for the listeners. It's been happening for circa 20 years, but over more recent years, in particular through the pandemic, where brands have been experimenting with how can we engage and have a relationship with these clients in their homes rather than having it in a retail space or something else. What's been your experience with connected packaging, and are you looking at that in the future?
You know, I think wine might be a tricky product for that sort of thing. I think, like I said, I think we're always trying to look at new ways to be innovative in terms of, trying to get better. And I think connected packaging is a way that maybe that's doable for us. But I think we're in the systems around packing wine and then delivering wine make that a bit challenging.
It does, yeah. And I guess that when, I'm not in the wine industry, this is completely over the market. My sort of consumer perspective is, as I walk down the aisle, sometimes there's a stand with a little screen on it, or there's a stand-up point of sale item that has a screen that, as I walk by, comes on and starts talking about the kind of, I guess, the origin story of the wine and the credibility of the grape. Is that something that you have experimented with, or is that something that I'm thinking of? Augmented reality is not here at the moment, but maybe somewhere down the line, if I'm scanning my phone down an aisle and certain ones pop out at me, is that something you're thinking about?
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned you're in Charlotte. There's actually a company in North Carolina called Luma that does exactly sort of what you mentioned. And I think really on the most basic level is, providing those screens in the store for providing that like educational experience for consumers about products. And I think for wine, that's really important, but it's really important in the sort of like grocery sector or retail sector in general. So yeah, we have worked with them in the past. We did a number of programs with this sort of like East Coast, Southeast retailers using Luma. And I think it's really valuable. I think the question we have to ask is, and I think, listen, the augmented reality stuff is really interesting. I mean, I think there's a way in which it like often feels kitschy to the average consumer. And I think it relies on, you need a thoughtful consumer for that sort of thing. I don't know how much I believe like augmented reality is going to be a major part of the purchasing like process for the average consumer. But I think, yeah, wine, it desperately needs a way to like share and communicate with customers, because like I said at the beginning of the show, I mean, the traditional customer is used to buying one thing that looks a really specific way. And people have, the average person has such little knowledge about what they're buying that there's like, you almost end up with decision paralysis because there's tons of options and you don't know anything about any of them. So the only thing you really feel comfortable doing is buying the one thing that you've bought before. And I think even just as you mentioned, the video screen in the store, or even augmented reality with bottles popping out at you, like even just getting like 10 seconds to share something with a customer about, hey, this is why I think we're great and why I think we deserve the $15 you're going to spend to purchase this, would go a really long way. The question is, how do you get the consumer interested in like diving into actually get that information?
Yeah, fully agree. Well, we've got a ton of gold here. Thank you so much, Walker, for jumping on here. It's been really interesting getting a different perspective from the beverage market like this, but not only that, but from a mission and vision, kind of doing good in the world orientated business. There's not many of them out there, and you're doing things right. So congratulations on what you've built to date. That's it for this episode of Unboxed. Thank you to our guest Walker for sharing all the insights. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave a review wherever you're listening to this. It means a lot to us and the algorithm robot overlords. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, or you'd like to be a guest, reach out to us at unboxed@merchantboxes.com. And Walker, if someone wanted to reach out to you or find out more, where would they go to do that?
Yeah, definitely. You can find us on our websites, www.lubanzi, Lubanzi wines.com. You can honestly email me directly. You can email anyone on our team directly in there. Always looking to chat with folks. So yeah, reach out anytime.
Awesome. We'll put the links in the show notes as well. So if someone does want to get in contact, they can hit that button and get over there. And until next time, keep thinking outside the box and creating unforgettable brand experiences. I'm going to speak to you soon. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode. It was sponsored by Merchant Boxes. Merchant Boxes provide custom packaging to large businesses and small creators that customers love. If you are looking for award-winning custom package designs that make your business and products stand out from the competition, click the link in the show notes to find out more.